And we have started. So, Rodney, this is what you do. After you open your file, you have to make sure that it has no gray pixels, which this one doesn't. But if it did, see, as you can see, there are no gray pixels there. But if yours do, this is what you do to take care of that. Make sure you're on the right layer. Go to adjustments, threshold, and you play with this until you get the best of both worlds, meaning you don't have any like where your gray spots may be, you don't have any of that stuff. You have just solid black inks, and you have very white whites with no like specks of pencil shavings or anything that you don't want to be printed, basically. So hit OK on that. And basically the file structure to set things up, don't worry about this. This is actually old files, but just pretend like this has background on it. You would just, make a copy of it like this. Let's see if this is background. Then yours will look just like this. It will be copied. That you just name this part to inks. And there you go. And what you do with this, well, of course, you got to make sure you're not on grayscale and that you're on RGB. The other thing you want to make sure of is that image size is set to at least 600 dots per inch. And you actually do that before you do the threshold, just to make everything work better. So, okay, back to this. And cut that layer off so you still see the inks here. And we'll pick, just say, we're picking random colors now. You're gonna do flats. Flats mean you're just separating shapes. You're not worried about colors, only separating shapes. So I'm just gonna pick a random color here. Oh, before we color anything, we gotta make sure our tools are on anti-alias. This selection needs to be off. It needs to be off on anything that you need to select. So the lasso tool, selection tool, and since we're using a pencil tool, because it's super sharp, we're going to do that. And we're not using anything that's like with feathered edges. Basically, it's what you're trying to get rid of. So like this, you see how it's soft on the edges? That's what you don't want. So we're going to use the pencil tool. Same thing with paint bucket. This needs to be off. Everything else should look basically the same as this. Okay, we picked a random color, right? So we switch with this. We switch it to the background. Now is a good time for you to learn your shortcuts. So basically what I'm going to do is select all, which is the Windows key plus the A button if you're on Windows. And I'll zoom out so you can see what it's going to do. For these little marching ants around everything. And after you select all, you can clear it, or, well, that's actually not what you want. You want to kind of just cut it. Well, I guess that's good enough for now. And you just take that paint bucket tool and fill it with whatever the random color is. So it can be gray, it doesn't matter. Why it doesn't matter? Because the inks are here, remember? I'm gonna cut the inks on, and because we take it from the normal to multiply. Multiply basically makes the white transparent. And another good rule to follow is, because we're going to be working on the layer under this, we're going to set this to lock. So I can't do anything to this layer now because it's locked, you see. And the best way to think about this is, with Photoshop, you work in layers, and layers basically mean that you have sheets of paper on top of each other. Either they can stay paper, or you can make them like glass, so you can make them transparent, which is basically what I did when I changed this blend-in mode. And I'll change it back so you can see. So now it's like paper, it's opaque, right? You can make it like tracing paper by taking that down even more. See? But what we need it to be glass, but we need the blacks to still be solid. So that's why we're going to change this to multiply. We're going to log it so we don't screw anything up. And just because we're going to lock this too, just because we don't want to mess with that. Working on background. And I'm just going to do one of these panels. The idea is you want to separate each shape. So that means the background needs to be a different color than his face. His eyes need to be a different color. His lip needs to be a different color. The cup needs to be a different color. Whatever object touches another object needs to be separated from the object that it's around. And we're going to do that by using random colors. I don't care about his skin tone or none of that. We're going to use the lasso tool. And we're actually going to use this version of it, but the way we're going to do that is by holding the Alt key when we lasso tool. So the lasso tool works like this. And it's acting a little funky, I think more because I'm recording with it, but you get the idea. And basically what the lasso tool does, it separates, different segments of the picture. So now I can only draw what's inside of the marching ants. I don't want to do that. So we go to history, go back to that, and deselect. This is another time where the shortcuts come in handy. It's better to learn the shortcuts early so you don't have to always go here to do stuff. You don't want to have to look for something when it's always in the same place on your keyboard. I mean, it's like playing a piano or driving a car. You don't have to think about operating. You just have to think about what you want to do. And the other thing is you want to separate. You want to basically go from the general to the specific. So you don't start out trying to select his eyes and his lips. That's inefficient. You want to do big blocks of shapes. So we're going to do him with everything. So cup and everything together as one big shape. And you see how this little icon has changed to the polygon tool? That's because I'm holding the Alt key. I'm keeping holding the Alt key as I'm doing this. As soon as I let go, it's going to change back to something else, but I don't want to do that. And you basically just, select all around. And you're going to feel for it once you start doing it. The great thing is you don't have to go all around here because that's not going to show up anyway. So you can just skip all through that. You don't have to be neat doing this, but you do have to be precise. I'm just making sure there's nothing over there like an arm or something else. Okay, that's one piece. And the shortcut key for the lasso tool is the L key. The shortcut key for the paint bucket is the G key. Okay, that's done. To deselect something is the Windows key plus the D key. Well, no. Yep, that's what it is. Okay, still have the lasso tool. So now let's see, I want to take the background out. Well, because the background is its own shape, I can actually select it and change it so it's separated from, you know, the other color, the other gray that's on the page. So we can go to this tool, and I have this on something else. So if that's your issue, you can do this normal, and now you can select whatever you want. Normally I would hit the fill key, but the fill key would basically fill everything in. So I'm just going to select another random color and hit it. I don't like that because it's just bright doing this video. So, oops. I messed around and selected the same color. So I'm going to step backwards, which is probably a good thing that I showed you that. You don't want to do that because that basically cancels out your work. It's just like if I selected gray again. I'll just get another color that's not that same shade. There you go. Deselect, lasso, zoom in a little bit. And because we have this green still selected, and later on it's going to need to be the same color, you know, whatever we pick, I'm going to select that part, and I can, you know, fill that by holding the Alt key and hitting the backspace button. That way I don't have to hit another key, you know, I don't have to go to the paint bucket tool to do that. That's just another shortcut. So I'm going to show you something else you can do, which is you can select two things at the same time. Okay, we still have the polygon lasso tool, so I'm going to select this part. Although I'm not quite sure if this is supposed to be selected. I think that actually may be something else. I'll do that. Let's see, I think this is supposed to be the background. So that's one piece. And to do something else, you hold shift, you see it changes to a plus button when you press the shift key. So you hold shift again with the alt, so you're holding two keys now. And you go around just like you would if you were holding just one key. And you let go, there it is. Although somehow, okay, now you can see two different places, and it's Alt backspace, and those are changed. Okay, so let's say those are the biggest things on the page. Now things are getting separated. Let's say I want to select the cup. The whole point of doing this is do it fast as possible. You don't want to think too much. So that's, you know, a piece. And I don't want to do this to the fill, remember, because it's going to wipe out the background. So we undo that, of course, is Windows key and Z to undo, which is that. So we take the paint bucket. Paint bucket only is going to do things that are like, these two colors are different. So if I put it here, it's only going to change that color. So that's done. Then we go around his fingers, and you know, Nick work is perfect for this kind of thing. He has a lot of angles and shapes well defined. And you see this, that's going to happen sometime, but remember, the trick to getting more than one thing is to hold the shift key, so you can just kind of circle that. And now it has it in there. And because we don't have any other shapes, we can do the Alt and backspace. I think that is his thumb. That's what I think. And technically, you know, he can be that light green. We don't have to change every color. So we're going to separate this, I guess, lanyard. And I think this is a shirt where we're going to go ahead and grab that as well. And I'll go ahead. I want to separate that earring. Random color. Paint bucket. Now we're going to separate a shirt from the lanyard. Random color. Now the great thing is it doesn't have to be another color, as long as it's different than the colors it touched. So I can sample this, and you sample colors by holding the Alt key while you have the paint bucket tool selected. See Alt key, nothing, Alt key, Alt key. And you'll notice these colors down here change. As I select orange, it changes to orange. If I select purple, you know, so then you just touch that. But, you know, for the purpose of this video, we're just gonna try to keep it moving. Try to keep it so you can actually see what's going on though. I know you're wondering, when do we get to the coloring? We get to the coloring after we do this tedious part of making sure all the shapes are separated. And basically we're trying to save work later on. So come in this will be real important later when we do start coloring. And once you get good at using shortcuts, they basically, you know, you'll start playing Photoshop like it's a piano. You don't have to think about it. Just think about what you want to do. And I'm zooming in, you know, zoom in, zoom out. By pressing the Windows key plus, you know, with the plus key or with the minus key. So Windows plus the plus key, Windows and the plus key equals zoom in. Windows and the minus key equals zoom out. And the way most people work when doing this kind of stuff, you know, if you have a stylus tablet, then you have one hand on, you know, your pen on the tablet, and then you have one hand on the keyboard to do your shortcuts. Or, you know, you have one hand on your mouse and one hand on the keyboard. So I think his eyes and lips are the last few things. And because we have the pencil, remember we did the pencil tool? Let's see. You can just draw that in if you want, because it's all about separating shapes. Another random. So basically this panel is done. And then you do this for all the panels. As far as flatted, that's all I need. Now, how do you start coloring? That's what you're wondering. I know you are. This is what you do to start coloring. Just add a new blank layer. There's nothing on this. We're gonna cut this off so we don't get confused. And what I like to do is find a good mid-tone, something that's going to be in the middle and kind of help set the mood. So let's say, you know, we'll start with the orange. Let's say it's either early morning or in the late afternoon or something. So you're going to fill the whole thing. And here's another pro tip. You do not want to use bright colors with midtones. Midtones mean middle way. This way or this way. Not too dark, definitely not over here. This is too bright. You save this for stuff later on. Use this when you want it to be on purpose. You can't have everything bright, or it's just not going to have the same effect when you want something to be bright and get noticed. So that's why I try to keep it mid-tone, at least to start out. So, and I know it looks, super dirty here, but you'll see in a second. You can always alter that. So Alt backspace, and we want to do the hue saturation, which is this. A lot of times it's good to just throw down the color. You can always tweak stuff or figure it out later. So let's say, is that too much? I can tell you just from looking at it, to me, it already feels too saturated. So I'm going to take it closer to gray, take more color out. It'll give you a truer representation of what your colors look like also. Okay, that's basically like a warm gray. Now, this is how you use this. You're gonna copy it, because it's good to have copies after you've done everything. Oops. We're gonna call this flats. What you do with flats is you take this and you bring this opacity down. Remember, we talked about you can make it like transparency. You can make it like tracing paper, where if you take it all the way down, it's basically like a sheet of transparency, or clear glass or something. And it doesn't matter where you can have this on top, or I'll just leave it where it is. And you're going to use that flats layer to select different pieces. So if I want to just select his face, let's see, magic wand tool, and make sure with this is not on anti-aliasing. See, now we have his hands and all that good stuff. So you can see, we'll pick, let's see what this color is. I'm holding Alt key. Okay, that is that color. You can go here, and here you'll see hue HSB sliders, which is hue, saturation, brightness. I don't need to be super bright, but I do want to add a little bit of color in it and move it closer to actual skin tone. Another trick, and when you see these ants, they're cool, but they can be distracting. So you press the Windows key and H and it'll hide them for you. Everything is still selected. So, if I click the pencil tool and go through, you'll see that they're still there. I don't feel like that color is what I'm looking for, so I'm going to go to hue saturation. And the shortcut, for this, you always see they normally show shortcut is the Windows key and the U key. So that's how it pops up without you seeing me go to the menus. Let's see. Now you can get wild with these colors, of course. Hey, I think that might be a little closer. Let's say there. That's kind of mid-tone-ish. We'll do the cup and everything real quick. And remember, we still have those ants there. So you press the Windows key and H and it brings them back. I like that, so we're going to deselect it. Magic wand tool, let's do the cut. Whoops. See, that's what would happen if you didn't have flats, but since I have flats, you click the flats layer and you click the cut, and there you go. Let's see, I screwed up and had these being the same color, which I didn't know, but that's fine. Let's see, let's make this coffee cut. And you'll notice when these colors get around each other, they're gonna look different. So green may not look green depending on what's around it. And most of these are probably gonna look too bright. I made the cardinal mistake. Let's see. Okay. You want to have flats be locked so you can't make marks on it. Now, hue saturation, because that looks bright, you're going to take it down a notch. See, we're going close to white, but in all actuality, that's not close to white. It's all about what's around it. So look, this gives you the true color. White is way up here. And I do it this way because I can control where the light comes from. You see how it changed the color of that? Let's change that to something a little bit more pleasurable. Let's see, he has a purple shirt or a red shirt on, or gold or something. And you start to get a feel of, you know, what things look like. So it's flats to select. We'll change this to color so it's more obvious. Colors to color. So flats. Let's change the whites of his eyes. That should be pretty simple. Basically, you want to go close to white, but not really white. And normally you add pink because, you know, you got blood in there. Those look awfully bright to me. But, you know, we'll let them stand. Let's say his lip, and technically it is a different color than everything else. And if you just want to select the lips, you could do this little trick, contiguous, and it should just do that. So that saves you a step of having to go to the flats layer. We'll just do this. We'll select his skin tone, color his lip that skin tone, then change it to make it just a little brighter. Okay, and there you go. It's looking like a brother. Right? Okay, we go to flat so we can select this lanyard. Back to colors. Now we're just going to go to hue saturation since we're always tweaking and doing things there. And here, I'm not really looking at this. I'm moving this while I'm looking over here. Okay, that's close enough for what we're looking for. And I think that diamond is probably going to be blue. So let's do that. Flats, select colors. think the value is close to that. So there you go. And what we could do is zoom in a little bit so you can see. Hue saturation, I'm gonna move it closer to blue. Needs to be a little bit brighter. And sometimes you have to exaggerate to be able to know where to go with this stuff. And let's see, you got a little bit of color here that, you know, is coming through. You don't want those. So you switch to the pencil tool, you sample this color, you just color over that stuff. There you go. Easy peasy. Okay, so basically, that guy's, he could technically be done. You don't have to color everything to death. But I'm gonna cut a few shadows in just so you can see, like, you know, that stuff. So I'm going to use the lasso tool, and I pretend like the light is coming this way, casting the shadow, so you have a hard edge here, under here, under here. You'll see it'll start to develop. So it's basically midtones, shadows, highlights. And a general rule is shadows are cooler. So if we do this, let's hide that. I'm gonna do hue saturation. Of course, they're also a little darker. They can't be super saturated because that makes no sense for a shadow. So you're going closer to purple. Okay, let's say that's close to what we want. And it's not going to be super perfect or anything. And basically, you're just kind of doing contours of the face. Nothing complicated. Now, what do? You sample that same shadow for the other parts. You can also just try stuff out, like, you know, maybe that's too much, which I do think it is too much. You can step back. You don't have to keep it. Maybe here is enough. I mean, with Nic stuff, you can basically see all the contours in there. Gotta kind of be slick with this one tool. Okay, I dug myself in a way that I didn't want to, but this is what we can do. If you hit the X key, you can switch between colors. You have two colors loaded in your brush, so, you know, I switch, change it back to skin tone, change this back to skin tone. Pencil tool, I'm just gonna draw it in faster. Oops, shadow, draw it in a little faster. go ahead and do his hands. Whoops, I need to press the plus key. Like I said, you'll start seeing this stuff in there, because it seemed like most of this would be in shadow. Another trick you can do well, you can do it this way. You hit levels, which is this. Adjust levels. See how it's adding that shadow in there? If we hide it, we could see it. It's only doing light and dark. It's not changing any of the actual colors. So you could do that. Hit OK. You can go back to your hue saturation, add color in there. Remember, it goes towards cool, not super saturated. Okay. I'm gonna do the same thing with the cup. So let's figure out what that shadow is. A little dark. We don't want this to be super dark shadows. That's good enough for me. Sample that color. Draw just a little bit there. Of course, you can get ridiculous where you're drawing the shadow for the fingers and all that, but remember, this is a comic book. It's not supposed to be reality. So the more noodling you get in one, it means you have to carry that over to every other one. So you just want to suggest things, not try to define every freaking shape. It gets old, to me anyway. And since we have that, let's say we're going to do the highlights on this now. Another trick you can do is open this up, because you see I have this selected. I don't want to change that color. Highlights tend to be warm, or at least a warmer version of whatever it is you have, so they actually stand out. And it's better to be saturated in highlights. You don't want everything to be like white highlights. I guess that'd be too much. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. What I wanted to do was just find that color, but I'm gonna go one step back, and I just sampled it because now I can go back, and we don't want that to happen to his fingers. So we go back one. Now we can just throw that color in there. Let's throw a highlight on his face or so. Let's find out what this is first. So a little light, more saturated. You want the highlights to be more saturated than the shadows. Not too saturated, of course. So that's that. Basically, that's one panel. This is what this page looks like. So you can see. I chose to go flat, but you get to see. That's the end.